Hi, young agents. My name is Victoria, and I hope you're having a great day. Today, we're gonna be talking about the case of Michele Neurauter. She was discovered hanging at her Korean, New York home on August 28, 2017, and investigators assumed she had committed herself. The case, however, quickly flipped on its head when witness statements and evidence suggested differently. Michele was 46 years old at the time of her murder. She was a loving mother who was well liked by her friends, according to her neighbors. Her friendliness was lauded by acquaintances who claimed she was always willing to help anyone in need. Michele was also looking forward to a brighter and more independent life, despite being involved in a lengthy custody fight with her ex-husband Lloyd Neurauter. Her ambitions, however, were dashed when a wicked act of rage ripped her life from her grasp. Lloyd and Michele were high school sweethearts who married soon after their graduation in 1991. They went off to college as a married couple and within a few years started a family before settling down in Korean, New York. Acquaintance mentioned that the pair were happy initially and Lloyd worked as an engineer at Corning Glass. Michele too picked up a job and began teaching English at a local college. Michele gave birth to a daughter and 2 years later a second child, Carrie. Nevertheless, Lloyd's behavior with his children was extremely strict, almost bordering on abuse, which should have been a massive red flag. Still, there were no immediate signs of trouble until Michele surprisingly cut all ties with her parents in 2007. In the following year, Lloyd went away to New Jersey, leaving the rest of his family behind in New York. Although life was hard for the mother of three, she tried to give her children the childhood they deserved, until Lloyd suddenly filed for divorce. Their divorce was extremely messy as Lloyd allegedly tried turning the children against their mother. The pair were also embroiled in a custody battle over their third born, although Lloyd suddenly stopped responding to calls or texts in 2017. As a result, the case was dismissed and Michele looked forward to building a better life with her daughters.
Everly, can I help you?
Hi, my name is Carrie. My friends called me earlier today and told me about my mom. And that she, I'm sorry.
That's okay.
I
Take your time.
She called and told me that my mom hurt herself.
Yeah, we are looking into it. And still with you now?
Yeah, she's in my apartment.
So, it was a call from Carrie, the second child of Michele and Lloyd. In 2017, she was already attending college in Rochester when on August 28, she received the news of her mother's death. You can notice the odd switch in Carrie's manner when the police asked about her sister. She'd gone from sobbing and unable to speak to completely matter-of-fact in less than a nanosecond. When 911 operators learned of a possible suicide death at home in Korean, they dispatched first responders right away. Michele was found slumped on the floor with a rope around her neck when investigators arrived on the scene. Although it appeared to be a suicide at first glance, the authorities quickly recognized it could have been something else entirely. The authorities didn't know whatever Michele's death was a homicide at the time of their initial investigation. Chief Jeff Spalding said that on the scene several things struck him. Hanging was an unusual way for Michele to end her life. She was a lovely mother, so wouldn't she have wanted to risk her daughters finding her like this? Her mattress had been pushed away from the bed frame, smudges of blood were on the wall. She had ligature marks around her lower lip as though someone had been pulling the rope from behind that had caught on her chin. Although there were scratches around the neck and it looked like Michele had been clawing at the news in her final moments of life. Mina Ray met the Neurauter's middle daughter Carrie in ballet class. The two quickly bonded. Her mother, Cynthia, would become one of Michele's closest friends. She said that she met Lloyd first because he would bring the children to dance classes. He would do their hair, and the mothers were rather smitten with him. She thought he was a really amazing person. He's very charismatic, shows a lot of care, but as Mina spent more time with Carrie, she became concerned about Lloyd's overbearing parenting style. Mina said that there were times when she'd call her mom and tell her that she was worried about how strict of a disciplinarian he was for really, really small things. It was sort of like you never knew when he would snap. And if he decided he was mad at one of them, he would call them over, yell front and center, and have them drop to their knees in front of everyone. She added that she'd seen him slap them. Lloyd made Michele cut off contact with her family. He didn't want her to have a place to go if she wanted to leave. But it turned out to be Lloyd who left the following year. In 2008, he took a new job in New Jersey, leaving Michele and the kids behind in Corning. Susan was Michele's attorney. She said that Michele was surprised that he filed for divorce. She was a stay-at-home mom. She had done everything she thought she could do to make him happy and the family happy. And in 2013, after the couple had divorced, Michele moved into a new house with the girls. And that's when the real trouble began. Lloyd wanted sole custody of the kids. He was relentless in using the legal system to harass Michele. It just never ended. There were 27 separate sets of filings post-divorce. He continually filed things making false claims against Michele. Lloyd was trying to get off child support, and Michele accused Lloyd of trying to turn the kids against her. The oldest daughter was already living with Lloyd and Carrie had gone off to college. Anybody who worked in a courthouse had heard about the Neurauter's case. This husband and wife were going at it non-stop. So this is one of those cases that everybody sort of heard about, talked about over the water cooler or at the bar, and the name came up. It was one of those cases that just didn't go away. But in late August 2017, Lloyd did something unusual. Susan got a text from Michele. He says, "I'm in shock. Lloyd didn't show up for the appearance for his petition for sole custody. He didn't withdraw. He didn't ask for an adjournment. He didn't answer the court's phone calls, emails, nothing." How unusual is that for him, knowing how many of these filings he's made? It was very unusual. Because of Lloyd's no-show, the case was dismissed. Michele seemed relieved and happy. 2 days later, on Monday, a family friend came to pick up the Neurauter's 14-year-old for swim practice. Instantly, he knew something was very wrong. What's more, Michele's youngest child, the 14-year-old, at the heart of the custody battle and who was supposed to be picked up for swim practice, was nowhere to be found.
911 Center.
Had something strange happening at a friend's house.
And as we already have known, later that day, police got a phone call from Carrie, and she told the officer that her younger sister was safe. She was nearly 100 miles away with Carrie in Rochester. She then told how it happened. She had driven back to Corning late Saturday night to spend one last night in her bedroom at home. Carrie said her mother raged at her, accusing her of taking her father's side in their family court battles. Carrie says she decided to leave, taking her younger sister with her. She claimed that she was concerned for her younger sister, so she had taken her outside, put her in the car, and then had driven her to Rochester. While police were relieved that Michelle's youngest was safe, Carrie's story didn't really make sense. Why would Michelle be so upset on the same day she had been celebrating her court victory? Those who knew Michelle best couldn't believe she'd take her own life. As police awaited the results of the autopsy, Chief Jeff Spaulding said that he thought they would get some definite results. They would say, yeah, 100% this is a homicide or 100% this is a suicide. But the medical examiner's conclusion surprised them. Undecided, undetermined causation. Jenny Laundy, Michelle's mother, didn't need an autopsy to tell her what happened. She didn't believe she killed herself. She immediately thought that it was a homicide, and one name came to mind. She was thinking that it's more than likely Lloyd killed her, but she couldn't figure out how because he had an alibi. Lloyd was in fact in California for a job interview when police discovered Michelle's body.
How long has he been in California?
Since yesterday.
Was he in Corning at all yesterday?
No, he helped move me in to my apartment on Saturday,
Okay.
but he wasn't in Corning.
Even if Lloyd wasn't in Corning, he'd been close, about 100 miles away. So all of a sudden, he's only an hour and change away up in Rochester. Carrie said that after her father helped her move into her Rochester apartment on Saturday, he spent the night in a hotel and flew out to California the next day. He was still there when family notified him of Michelle's death. He flew back east and within 36 hours showed up at the Steuben County Family Court. He came to turn off his child support and maintenance payments. That's the first place he went when he heard his ex-wife had committed suicide. Police caught up with him outside the courthouse.
Mr. Gatorvoli?
Hey, how are you?
Good. Just cautious about how I approach a car. I don't want to startle anybody.
Michelle knows she's coming, or
She did, yes.
Okay.
And that was second at the microtel.
will you go back to the hotel? Right.
Yeah. I invited her to breakfast the next morning.
So as we can see, Lloyd calmly echoes Carrie's story. In the hours before Michelle's death, he was in Rochester helping Carrie move into her college apartment. Lloyd says he checked into that hotel Saturday. Hotel security cameras back him up. Carrie came over for a while. Dark parking lot video then shows both he and Carrie heading to her car.
I walked her out to the car.
Then will you go back to the hotel? Right.
Yeah. I invited her to breakfast the next morning.
And at 7 a.m. the next morning, cameras show Carrie arriving for breakfast, now with her 14-year-old sister in tow. Chief Jeff Spaulding checked his phone. It kind of corroborated what Carrie had told, that Dad stayed at the hotel, but the hotel video tells a different story. When Lloyd walked Carrie to her car that night, he can be seen getting in the car with her and then driving off. And the video doesn't show him coming back that night. So while Lloyd's phone was in the hotel room all night, where was Lloyd? Investigators had to wonder, especially when they looked at the hotel video from the next morning. We don't see Lloyd all night long, and here it's 6:30 in the morning, and here he comes onto the camera. He's walking across the parking lot, and he's walking to his vehicle. He still appears to be wearing the same clothes that he had on the night before. Lloyd's story was that he stayed at the hotel room all night. The video evidence is saying no, he didn't. Police were now certain Lloyd was lying to them. They dug deeper looking for a motive. He wasn't in a good financial place. Lloyd had over $100,000 in credit card debts, and he was paying Michele almost $6,000 every month. After Michelle's death, Lloyd tried to collect on Michelle's life insurance for a payout of $260,000. They suspected Lloyd killed Michele and Carrie might be covering for him. So police decided to go up on a wiretap on Lloyd's phone and Carrie's phone.
I'm freaking out.
Me too.
Oh, I don't know what to do. I don't know what to do. I don't know what to do.
All 2017, a little over 2 months after Michelle's death, Korean police began listening in on Lloyd and Carrie Neurauter's phone calls. They didn't go up on the wire until mid-November. This had happened at the end of August, beginning of September, so it'd been 2 months and there wasn't a lot that was being said. So in order to kind of refresh things, police did what was called tickle the wire. It's a ruse familiar to cops work in drug cases. An investigator calls Carrie saying they have more questions.
Is this Carrie Neurauter?
Yes, this is she.
Okay. This is Investigator Volpe with Corning PD. Well, the reason I was calling, well, I didn't know if you were going to be around, if you had time to meet up with me, or what time you might have to stop in to see me.
I should be able to meet with you Monday if you're available.
Okay.
After hanging up with police, Carrie quickly calls her father.
What exactly did you tell him?
I don't know.
I'm sorry, I got a counseling appointment back in New Jersey tonight. And tell him this has been really hard on me.
Yeah,
Could you cry?
I might.
God, it would be nice if then it was just over.
That would be the dream. So is that anything more serious? I guess you'd have people coming after me anyways, right?
Yeah, he wouldn't ask you to come walk in the front door. He'd say, I have a warrant.
Yeah.
So it can't be that.
Police are clearly suspicious, but with the undead in mind, official autopsy holding the case back, the DA asked a private forensic pathologist to take a new look and confirm finally whether Michele was murdered. There was no body to examine because Lloyd had Michelle's remains cremated, but the pathologist saw that rope mark on Michelle's chin, pathetical hemorrhage in her eyes. He concluded that it was a homicide. Michele was strangled to death. Police headed out to confront Lloyd and Carrie on January 24, 2018, 5 months after Michelle's death. 2 investigators showed up at Lloyd's office in New Jersey. At the same time, a pair of state police troopers find Carrie at her college internship. Investigators break the news to Lloyd that the medical examiner has ruled this is a homicide. Police suggested him to take a lie detector test, and he said sure, and so they gave him directions to a police station down in New Jersey where they had a polygraph operator that was already on call. Lloyd appeared confident in his innocence. 200 miles away, Carrie was anything but.
In the front door of the house, you tell me at this point.
No.
Where was Mom?
She was at the top of the stairs. So she saw my dad come in. And then they started arguing. So he went upstairs and they were arguing in her room.
You saw your mom?
Yeah, I know you did.
No, you didn't.
I know you did. That's sweet. You know.
When you saw her, was she still alive?
Investigators then took Carrie to a police station. They wanted the whole story on video.
He was gonna kill himself. Or there was this way to make it so he would kill himself, which was killing my mom. and then put the rope around her neck and strangle her. I went upstairs into my mom's room, and she was like, "What are you doing? Why are you here?" And so she was yelling, and she was like, "Why? Why?" Freaking out. I didn't know what was going on. I was like, "Oh my God." And I put her in my car. Okay, let's go. We went too close to the house. Mom.
She said her father came to her a week before the murder. He said, "I have to kill myself. I'm sorry you guys have to go on without me, or I got plan B," which was killing Michele. And she had to choose. Lloyd gave Carrie an ultimatum. She says Lloyd laid out his plan. They would make it look like a suicide. When Lloyd was finished, he sneaked out the back of the house around the side and climbed into the open rear hatch of Carrie's car. According to Carrie, her 14-year-old sister never knew her father was there. Police were now ready to arrest Lloyd. The only problem, he never showed up for that polygraph test. He had disappeared. But Lloyd still had his phone, and police were still up on the wire on Lloyd's phone. Police knew that his phone was in downtown Princeton somewhere. They managed to trace it to a municipal parking structure, and there on the roof was Lloyd Neurauter. When the officers moved in to confront Lloyd and to pick him up, he bolted and hopped up on the rail and threatened to jump off the 5-story parking garage to commit suicide. For 2 hours, Lloyd Neurauter kept police at bay. When he turned his back, they made their move. Lloyd was arrested and charged with first-degree murder of his ex-wife Michele. Their daughter, Carrie, who police believed had been manipulated by Lloyd, faced second-degree murder charges for helping her father get into the house that night. PA Brooks Baker points to a photo of Michele, which was taken on the last day of her life. This reminds us why we're doing it, because this lady is not here to have another day like this, he tells. Baker knows his odds of convicting Lloyd will greatly increase if he can convince Carrie to testify against her father. She's looking at 15 years to life if she cooperates, with the understanding that if she doesn't cooperate and isn't truthful at trial, she will face 25 years to life. It takes Carrie sitting in a jail cell a couple of weeks to decide. She agrees to testify against her father and pled guilty. But then, during an interview with investigators, she surprises everyone with a new detail.
I opened the door, my mom was laying on the floor, and he said he needed my help lifting her over the side. Sorry.
That's okay. Okay.
Lloyd opened the door and Michele was laid on the floor and said he needed Carrie's help lifting her. Admitting for the first time she had an even bigger role helping her father cover up the murder. They dragged her around the corner and he tied the rope to the one prong of the banister and lifted her up and put through her over the side. That's pretty hardcore. This is the woman that gave you life, and you maybe didn't directly take her life, but you helped the individual that did. It's so hard to understand. How could a child do this to her mother? Could Lloyd really have manipulated Carrie into this? Police really think she was brainwashed. They found out that there is a definition for what he was doing. We are talking about the parental alienation. It's when one parent consistently badmouths the other in front of their children. And it's something Michelle worried about. In fact, in court documents filed in the years preceding her death, Michelle actually accused Lloyd of turning Carrie against her. The district attorney thinks that's exactly what happened. You could cause your children to dislike the other parent, but to kill that other parent, that seems like a step too far. But parental alienation, it causes them to absolutely devalue them as people. Case in point, 2 years before her death, Michelle was backing out of her driveway while Carrie bickered with her and tried to block her car from leaving. Friends say Lloyd then convinced Carrie that Michelle tried to run her over. Carrie even called police on her mother. The DA says Carrie felt she had no choice but to choose her father over her mother. But would the jury believe it? As Lloyd's trial approached, the DA was determined to paint a picture of Carrie as Lloyd's pawn. But Lloyd had his own plans. The evidence against Lloyd was circumstantial. All the district attorney had was Carrie's word, and the jury might not believe her story. What police needed was physical evidence linking Lloyd to the murder of his ex-wife. Lloyd's touch DNA was found on the pajamas Michelle was wearing the night she was murdered. Prosecutors gave Lloyd the time in use and a final opportunity to come clean. Police made to him an offer expected he would never ever accept. He had to plead guilty as charged to first-degree murder. He would face a sentence of 25 years to life with the possibility the judge can sentence him to life without parole. Just 2 weeks before trial, he decided to plead guilty. Lloyd pleaded guilty to Michelle's murder. At trial, he told the judge he killed his ex-wife because he believed she might hurt their children. As part of his plea deal, Lloyd had to recount his role in the murder. But when it came time to take personal responsibility, there were no cameras in the courtroom, but Lloyd told the judge he killed Michelle because he believed she might hurt their children. But then he sort of said, "But that doesn't matter. I have no excuse. Murder is wrong." And he went through and allocated line by line of what he did. In the end, Lloyd fulfilled his end of the plea deal, admitting he planned and carried out the homicide and that he manipulated Carrie into helping him. Life without parole for Lloyd. Michelle got justice. But there was still the matter of Carrie and what price should she pay for her mother's death. District Attorney Bruce Baker decided that Carrie needed therapy, but he didn't think that would be enough. She has to pay a price. She has to serve a sanction. He thinks for her own sanity she needs to serve some penance. Carrie was sentenced 1 to 3 years in a state prison. It was a huge relief to Lonely, who plans to tell her and her 2 sisters all about Michelle and just how much she loved them. Carrie was released from prison on parole on January 16, 2020. So write down what do you think about this case. If you're interested in true crime like I am, I hope that you would consider hitting that subscribe button, but either way, thanks for being here. See you in the next episode. Bye.